So what are the 7 sorrows of Mary? Glad you asked. The first sorrow is the prophecy of Simeon at the temple when they present Jesus at the temple, and Simeon tells Mary the prophecy that your son is destined for the rise and fall of many in Israel, and he is a sign that shall be opposed, and you yourself a sword shall pierce. And that's where we get the image of the swords for Our Lady of Sorrows. 7 swords, 7 sorrows. Her 7 major sorrows. The first sorrow was hearing that even though she already kind of knew it, but she didn't have the preternatural knowledge, she didn't know it, but she did know that things were going to happen. And her son, he's going to be opposed, and she's going to suffer as well. The second sorrow is the flight into Egypt. This is when the Holy Family needs to flee Bethlehem because of the governor of Judea. Herod wants to kill him. So they flee and they go to Egypt. Our Lady becomes a refugee, and she doesn't know for sure if she's ever going to get to go back to her home. I mean, she was, full of grace. She was immaculately conceived, but that doesn't mean she knew everything that was going to happen. She didn't know all the details. She did know that her son was the Son of God and that she was his mother. And she knew she needed to take care of him. And to take care of him, that meant going to Egypt. So that was the second sorrow of Mary, the flight into Egypt. Not knowing what was going to happen, but knowing that people wanted to kill her baby boy. And he was still a baby boy at this time. The third sorrow, it's the loss of Jesus in the temple. When Jesus was 12 years old and they went to Jerusalem for Passover, he stayed behind in the temple to talk with the priests and the scribes and the Pharisees. And Mary and Joseph didn't know where to find him. They lost him for 3 days. Now the joyful mystery part, we all know, comes when they find him. But this is the sorrow part of the 3 days of not knowing where Jesus is. Mary probably, like I said, she didn't have the preternatural knowledge. She didn't know everything that was going to happen in details, specifics. She didn't know when her son was going to be asked to save the world. So that had to be terrifying as a mother, to think that your 12-year-old might be suffering now for everybody and he's only 12. I mean, even though he's Jesus, that had to be hard for Mary for those 3 days missing him, not knowing where he is he okay, is he safe? This sorrow is really just a beautiful sorrow of motherly love. Now the rest of these sorrows all go much more towards Lent, so that's why this is such a beautiful Lenten prayer. The fourth sorrow is Mary meeting Jesus on the way of the cross. It's when Mary sees Jesus carrying his cross through the streets of Jerusalem, and she can't do anything to stop it. That had to just be heartbreaking for her, to see her baby boy. Even though he's a grown man, you all know this, that even if you're grown up, you're still your parents, your moms especially, and your dad's baby. You're still their baby kid, their baby girl, their baby boy. It had to be just terrifying for Our Lady to see her son, her baby boy, the light of her life, going through something so terrible. And it just breaks my heart to think that he couldn't comfort her too much. He couldn't tell her that everything was going to be perfect and sunny and roses, because at that time it wasn't perfect and sunny and roses. It was sorrow and walking the way of the cross, bloody, beaten, out of breath. It had to be terrifying for Our Lady. The fifth sorrow is Our Lady at the foot of the cross. Our Lady stood there and watched her son die. She couldn't do anything to stop it. She knew what it was for, that it was for salvation, that it was for all of us, and that it was for her even, but does that make it any easier to stand there and watch your only child die on the cross? I've always felt like that had to be one of the hardest things. Knowing too that Jesus was God, Mary knew that. She knew her son could do anything. She knew her son could come down off that cross. And it had to be heartbreaking for both Mary and Jesus to know that he could have saved his mother that pain. He could have come down off the cross, but then we would be left needing salvation yet. And he stayed there for us, even though it broke his poor mother's heart. And Our Lady just had to stand there and watch people revile her son and say such terrible things to him. And she couldn't really fight it because she knew that it was for us and for herself. And that's just beautiful. Number 6. This one, I cry when I get to this station in Stations of the Cross, let alone when I get to it in the 7 Sorrows Chaplet. This is the 6th sorrow. Mary holds the body of Jesus. Mary holds her son, her baby son, her dead son. She holds him. And she can't do anything. She knows he's dead. She knows God has a plan. She doesn't know what that plan is exactly, but she knows he has a plan. But it had to be so hard just to have, you already saw him on the way of the cross. You stood at the foot of the cross while he died. And now you're taking his bloody, broken body into your arms. I can't imagine how she must have cried to know that her baby was dead. She knew God had a plan. She didn't know what that plan meant exactly, but there was a plan. That had to just be terrifying for Our Lady. Just to know that the boy that you raised, the boy who gave you 30 years of his life, who gave his public ministry only 3, the boy who took care of you, whom you raised, he died. Yes, he died for us and for Mary, but he's still dead. That had to be so hard for Our Lady, just to hold his bruised, broken body. And I can't help but think back to when she first held his body for the very first time. It was when he was a baby in Bethlehem, in the stable. Our Lady held a baby boy. And now, at the end of his life, she's holding her baby boy, but he's broken and bloody and bruised and crucified. The 7th sorrow of Our Lady is the burial of Jesus. Our Lady had to be there. She had to put her son in the tomb. She had to stand there when they rolled the stone to block it from the wild animals. She had to stand there not knowing exactly what was going to happen, knowing there was a plan, knowing that God would take care of her and God would provide. But she didn't know for sure. She didn't know. She did not know what was going to happen. She knew that somehow salvation had been won because her son had died. But she didn't know exactly what it would mean until she could look back and say it was 3 days. But at this point, she wasn't there. She was sorry. She was sad. She was weeping. I just imagine her clinging to St. John the Evangelist and just crying, being like, my baby, my Jesus, he's dead. I have to leave him. I can't stay with him. I can't protect him anymore. That had to be so hard for Our Lady. And these are the 7 sorrows of Our Lady. This is the 7 sorrows, the chaplet of the 7 sorrows. And it really helps us to meditate on what Mary went through in her life, how much she suffered, but how every mystery, if you notice, every sorrow of Mary is related to Jesus. We only know Mary in light of Jesus. We can only come to Mary through Jesus. It is Jesus that allows us to see his mother. Any other questions you'd like me to address, especially during Lent when I'm vlogging every day in Lent, please leave them in the comments. Make sure you subscribe, and if you hit the bell, you'll be notified when I post new videos, because I'm not exactly sure what times they're going to go up, because like I've always said before, it depends on when I get them filmed and edited. I will see you next time. Goodbye.